Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm Dan Sissik. I'm here with my friends Samantha, Catherine, Karen. I'll let them jump out in a minute and introduce themselves in a minute, but we're in the book Whatever Rises, Love That. A Love Revolution That Begins With You by Matt Kahn. We're in chapter 6 and we're on page 118 in the book. And we're going to be reading from Freedom from the 4 Types of Inflammation. And we now have Lori who has joined us. So if everybody wants to jump out and say hi and introduce themselves, go ahead really quick, and then we'll get started.
Good morning.
I'm Karen Lohoff from Mesa, Arizona. Sorry, whoever I stepped on, I apologize.
It's all good, Karen. It's all good. This is Samantha in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement. I'm actually in a book, a real book today. I'm kind of excited. I've been reading on Kindle for so long, and it's
We lost you there, Catherine. What happened?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it's probably the internet. All right, by clearing agreements, contracts, and vows, you help free your personality from the 4 types of inflammation. For example, as you clear the formal vows of being a monk or nun that many empaths carry in the cells of their body, the personality is liberated from the identities of righteous and entitled inflammation. This allows you to rest in the humility of your heart without needing to be restricted by the framework of a specific role. In doing so, you no longer require a world to suffer in pain in order to provide you with an opportunity to share your gifts. Instead, you offer the magnificence of every gift that assists the world in evolving into higher levels of consciousness without needing anyone to suffer along the way. As agreements are released, including bonds to those who may have hurt, abandoned, or betrayed you, there is no longer a tendency to define yourself by a past you were always meant to survive. While many agreements are meant to be cleared, it is not necessary to clear every vow throughout your life. If you are blessed to be in a beautifully committed relationship or marriage where vows were taken as a conscious choice and celebration of love, those can only support your spiritual evolution. At the same time, no amount of agreements or formal vows can change the fact that one day you may wake up as a different version of yourself, no longer as the inflamed personality who participated in making such agreements. As always, trust the guidance of your inner wisdom to determine which relationships feel supportive and which vows are meant to be released. When a relationship reaches a point of completion, there may be a feeling of guilt for no longer desiring to be in such a partnership, as if you do not have the right to make a new decision, or fearing a universe looking down on you for wanting something different. While this can become a chance to recognize guilt as the next one to be loved, it cannot replace the bold series of choices that only you can prevent yourself from making. For those in a conscious relationship, partnership, or marriage, the deepest commitment is to wake up each day and say, "Today, I am not who I used to be. I'm a brand new version of myself that only today can inspire. In this brand new moment, I choose you again for whatever the day may bring." This helps you build a relationship with your current reality instead of being shackled by the past. If there comes a time where you sense a journey with another has come to an end, it can only be the wisdom of the universe guiding you forward into greater chapters of growth and expansion. This allows you to embrace every person much more deeply since the time spent together is so precious and uncertain. From this space, every relationship becomes an intimate expression of love in action. It invites connections to be rekindled in every breath, inspiring you to consciously participate in the relationships that you agree to be in. As you awaken, the importance of conscious relationships becomes a pivotal focal point. Such relationships come to life when agreements are made heart to heart instead of negotiated by ego. When agreements are no longer rooted in obligation, scarcity, fear, or coercion, you bring to life a timeless remembrance of the infinite choices that are always available. From one moment to the next, you are free to make choices in the name of love to discover the joy that you were always meant to find. Should we stop there, or do you want to continue?
I think we can cover a little bit of this here, and then if we feel like we got it, then we can jump on to the next one. Or do you guys think we should continue on? Any thoughts?
I'm cool either way.
I'm good either way.
Okay, well, I've got a couple things that I'll throw out, and I usually kind of start things anyway. So, in the beginning where it says, by clearing agreements, contracts, and vows, you help free your personality from the 4 types of inflammation. For example, as you clear the formal vows of being a monk or nun, that many empaths carry in themselves, the personality is liberated from the identities of righteous and entitled. And then this allows you to rest in the humility of your heart without needing to be restricted by the framework of a specific role. In doing so, you no longer require a world to suffer in pain in order to provide you with an opportunity to share your gifts. And in that section, I think in some ways, I think some of that's true. But as we went down further and like talking about the commitments, like in a marriage or that's where I think I look at it a little bit differently, because most of the time, and I do know that a lot over time people change and relationships change and marriages change, and maybe the part that helped me to maybe look at it differently is where it says, today I am not, on page 120, where it says, today I'm not who I used to be. I'm a brand new version of myself that only today can inspire. And in this brand new moment, I choose again for whatever the day, then I choose you again for whatever the day may bring. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't pick up on, or that every day it's a renewal or a renewing, and maybe that's why they get to feeling like they're hedged in or boxed in or whatever, because they have changed. And not to pick on you, Samantha, but I'm sure you can attest to that from when you were first, when you were younger, and you and your husband were thinking about marriage and all that, it was a very different feeling than like now. But it seems one, you guys, through your sharing with us before, some of the struggles that you and your husband went through, but it seems like you both made the decision in your mind to, we want to keep going forward together and work on this together, and every day be committed to that and getting rid of some of the shackles. And I think that's some of what people don't look at, is that let loose of the ideology that we have to, but maybe, okay, let's sit down and talk about it openly. If you can get the other person to do that, sometimes you're in the one space and they're not. You're realizing that, hey, I can make this choice, that I can choose still to go forward, but they may, not feel the same way. So in that sense, I think a lot of people forget that if you can sit down and both sit down to agree to look at it like that, that might make it easier to then make that decision to either continue forward or to realize that now is maybe time to change. And that's, I think, one of the things I've always wanted to be, in a committed relationship, to have somebody, but that has never ever occurred. And so in that sense, I have that desire to have it, but I've not met anybody that has had that same desire for me. So in that, I think that's, something that we learn to, we forget to trust ourselves sometimes, I think.
Well, what I get out of all of that, Dan, and my thoughts about the reading too, is that this is this is something that needs practice, and it needs somebody to talk with about these things. When the other gentleman was with us 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was, we were talking about how nice it is to have people that you can discuss these things with. I was in quite a tangle last night. I have been more at peace probably in the last 18 months or so than for quite a long time, and not getting myself so inflamed. And I totally forgot all that we had gone through as I was fussing about last night, and thinking that I needed things to go back to where they were more comfortable and more, I was more at peace with things. And I'm really glad to be able to listen to each one of you this morning, to listen to the reading, and to be reminded that these are things that we're working to overcome. We're working to overcome the inflammation and the readiness to be inflamed by certain things that we've kind of created habits out of. That's all I have for right now.
Yeah, Dan, I like that. Well, you brought up the marriage thing, and of course, it seemed like it talked about that a lot in this, and but this holds true for all relationships, really, and marriage is a big one, obviously, especially when you've been with somebody for a long period of time, because you go into a relationship with a certain expectation of how things are going to go, and you also go into it with like what it's talking about here is these agreements that you kind of make, and it's not necessarily the agreements that you make with the other person as much as, well, and that's part of it, yes, but there's this other aspect of these agreements that you make with yourself about what you think that you're supposed to do in this type of a relationship, and so and also what you think the other person is supposed to do. And I'll give you an example. When I was younger, before Chris and I got together, I was, I don't know, a lot of you, well, you guys here on the panel know that I was, I was born and raised as a Christian, and so Christians have very specific values when it comes to relationships and marriage and sex and all of those kinds of things. And so when I was younger, I had this idea in my head that, I'm only supposed to be with one person. I'm supposed to be with that one person forever. And, no matter what, that's till you die. And that messed me up a little bit when I was younger, because as a young adult and in the time of your life when sex is like, oh, this big taboo thing, and and you're not supposed to, and yet as a human being we're like have all these chemical things happening in our body that is causing us to want to. And so when I was younger, the first person that I was with was not somebody that I necessarily, well, it's not the person I ended up with, I'll say that. But anyway, in that situation, I had these agreements in my mind from these Christian beliefs that told me that because I was with that person in that way, that I had to be with that person for the rest of my life. That was like an agreement made. And so I stayed in that relationship for way longer than I should have. That was just a very bad relationship. He was just not a good person. But I was trying to be that person I thought I was supposed to be in terms of, agreements go, agreements that just like what we're talking about here. And I had to let go of that in order to get myself out of that bad relationship. And so then, and at the time I felt like a horrible person. I was just, there's something wrong with me and blah, 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 yeah. So it's one of those things where you really have to look at, what are these agreements that we have made with ourselves about who we are, what we stand for, etc. And is that really what this life is supposed to be about? And we have this other idea of these are also beliefs that are put on us that may not even agree with who we feel like we are. And so there's that aspect of it. Now, of course, when we go into a marriage situation, we have these ideas also that come into the marriage of who we think we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act and what we're supposed to do and all of those kinds of things. And as we grow as a person, we realize that, or at least I realized, that maybe some of these ideas were not what maybe not really what I was wanting to be. So for instance, I was taught that I was supposed to put the husband above all else. He's above me. His needs, wants, et cetera, are above me. And that was something that I thought I was supposed to do. And so a lot of the beginning of our relationship, even though my husband would, we were young, so we didn't communicate thoroughly, and I would just demur to him, and that is not a thing that you can continue to do over the long term, because it's not good for yourself, because you put yourself second in everything, and that causes discord. I mean, it's a recipe for discord. So I had to let go of that agreement as well in order to work in my relationship and choose that person every day. And that took a long time for me to get to the point where I could let go of that agreement and let go of this idea that I was not equal to my husband in a lot of ways. And that's just the things that was going on in my mind. That doesn't even include all of the, are we communicating effectively? Are we, getting along? Are we enjoying our life together? Are things going well? I mean, there's so many different aspects to all relationships, whether it's marriage or not. And I really like this chapter to remind us that, sometimes the things that we go into a life situation or a relationship or whatever, is that, maybe we can question those ideas and determine that, okay, that is not serving me in my life, and I need to let go of that, and I need to just be who I am right here in this moment and work from this space rather than these ideas that I think that I should or ought to, or etc. Okay, I know I've rambled for a while, guys.
No, that's good, because that's helpful. And I'm gonna now go and I'm the other one that's rambling a lot too. I always have stuff to say. For me as a single person, and I just said earlier, yes, I've always wanted to be in a committed. I have had some relationships that even my family would not view as being right, and I have let go of those relationships in some ways based on my views as, you know, my beliefs, my Christian values and everything like that, and along with my family. And I know where it stems from, partly because of my childhood and stuff, and I'm still needing that validation in some ways, although I've gotten past a lot of that validation and I don't need it the same way. But there's still that little bit of validation I'm looking for within my family and maybe myself a little bit. And so therefore I have not continued on with relationships that might have been something that could have been something that, you know, there were two times where, you know, they could have been, maybe could have been more. But they weren't, and I can't change that now. You know, once again, you make the decisions and then you kind of have to live with it and go forward, you know. But at the same time, as I'm getting older, I'm also kind of realizing that in some ways I might have missed out on something that could have been, you know, and that goes back into, you know, where it was, you know, where he talks about this helps you build a relationship with your current reality instead of being shackled by the past. And in some ways, I'm kind of in that throes of that right now. I'm kind of looking back at the past. I'm looking at now and looking at the future, and it's like, what am I really willing and wanting? And, you know, because over the last couple of years, I've been realizing, especially once my mom passed, I've realized just in some ways how alone I am. I'm not alone, but alone I am, because, you know, my last person I really felt I could really turn to, or if anything really big happened, I could always go to mom and say, Mom, you know, she was there. It was my grandmother before that, and then I would always turn to my grandmother before that. But then when my grandmother passed, and she's been gone for 17 years, so my mom became that, and then my aunt also. But even that has changed, and so now I'm really feeling like, and I'm going through, and I'm really making lots of decisions on my own rather than having somebody to turn to. And I think I talked about just have somebody there that I can just kind of, you know, come in, shut the world out and say, here, you handle things for a little while I just kind of, you know, recoup or re-energize or you know, recharge or whatever, lack of whatever, you know, but you take care of things for a while. Let me lean on you for that little bit. But I'm realizing even now more and more how much I only have me to rely on. And so in that sense, and going back, you know, and then it says later down here, as you awaken, the importance of conscious relationships become a pivotal focal point. And such relationships come to life when agreements are made heart to heart instead of negotiated by ego. And I think maybe in the past, that's some of what I've done. I negotiated my ego and what I thought based on my beliefs, based on my family, based on that. And I deferred to those rather than what would have fulfilled me or made me happy and helped me to grow in my own sense in some ways too. And so that's why I'm enjoying this little section too, because, you know, it's bringing out some of the things that I've been dealing with over the last, you know, like year or so.
I think it's just amazing how this world is so diverse and there's so many things that you can be or do and choices to make. And yet there's this underlying message to every child that's born almost that, you know, your purpose is to, maybe not your purpose, but you know, what you need to do is get married and have kids and work a job. And, you know, like we all just get crammed down the same highway there. And that doesn't work for everybody. And why would it? And how could anybody ever think that it could? And I think so many people torture themselves about not being enough or not being worthy because something hasn't come to them that maybe was never meant to come, but they've been convinced by society that if that doesn't come, they're faulty, that it's their fault. And it doesn't matter whether it's coming from the Christian side or the spiritual side. I too, stayed in abusive relationships much longer than I should have, even though it wasn't long compared to, other women that stay in them their entire life, or men too. But it wasn't from a Christian thing that I had guilt about that, but it was a spiritual thing, because I'm supposed to love everybody unconditionally. And I actually have a poem written about this, and I'll try to find it today. Since I lucked out and found the book, maybe I'll find this poem and I can put it in the Facebook page. But it talks about, don't fall into that trap. You can love somebody without living with them or being with them or even speaking to them or ever seeing them again in your entire life, Um, and as far as that chapter, or the part of the chapter that you reread, Dan, that I think that's a big hang up for many people that either do energy work or think about doing energy work. I know it's been a huge hang up of mine, not wanting to, how do I say this? In other words, to be a healer and to use that gift, somebody has to be sick or something's wrong with them, and that's why they're seeking that healing. And so I've always had a huge hang up over, why, even as a nurse too, why should my income, my money flow, whatever, be based and rest on the fact that somebody has to be sick for that to happen. So again, this is another great chapter from Matt, and love to hear the rest of your thoughts out there.
Anybody else have any thoughts they want to throw out or feeling or want to share?
I've been doing quite a bit of reflecting on what Sam was saying in particular, with regard to a couple of relationships. I guess that it's probably true of me that I eat slowly. I was at a table.
I think she froze.
I remember in grade school, the first, second, and third graders would go in first, and then they were supposed to clear out for the fourth, fifth, and sixth graders to come in. And there were a couple of times that I felt inundated with the older kids, and that was tough for me, scary for me. And I look at my relationships and trying to think about what's good for me now, or what applies now, and realizing how I've held on to the teachings that I was raised with, using them as a guilt tool for for a long time. Catherine was talking about allowing abuse in relationships lots longer than that should happen, and I have abused myself for a lot longer than should happen. As I look at what we're learning in this chapter, to recognize that there's parts of ourselves that we need to leave behind, leave in the past, and allow ourselves to move forward in a new place. And it can be difficult, especially if you straddle your family where you were grown up and the newer generations, and it's really quite mind-boggling for me to think about all these things and to try and be my own friend and care about my progression.
Yeah, I understand a lot of what you're saying, because I too myself feel that I understand abuse. I was abused when I was younger, but it's hard, and it's hard to look at yourself and recognize sometimes that you do that to yourself. And I've done that to myself in various ways because of beliefs or this or that, or what I think, or mindsets I get in. And it was weird. I've started to understand that difference. And I've talked about this before, was when I decided to leave the one job I was working at back in 2020. And just before the pandemic hit, worked doing it for like 4 months, and then it wasn't working out, and I was getting stressed and really stressed. And I finally made that decision. It was best in my own best interest for my health and my sleep and my, to leave that job, even though I wasn't sure what was going to happen, what was going to, how I was going to pay my bills. I really jumped out on faith in God and in my abilities, and, and the Ubering and doing that, and feeling that I could make a life that would allow me to sleep at night, feel comfortable. And I made that choice that my health was more important at that point. My sanity was more important than worry about trying to live up to somebody else, have them always questioning me. But in life as a whole, I have still let some of the dictations of my family override what I needed to do for myself. And that once again stems way back from when I was younger. I believe my faith sometimes hampers me a little bit, but I think it also emboldens me and gives me strength to continue on and help me move forward. And I'm where I'm at now today. I believe in a lot because of it. But I also know that, there have been those times where, like you, Karen, I've not put myself first in that sense. And I think as I'm getting old, I'm realizing to that a little bit more and more and more. So I appreciate that you shared that, because it's hard to share that sometimes, that, oh yes, by the way, I'm the worst one to myself, because nobody wants to really admit that, sometimes that, you want to look at everybody else, but sometimes it's hard to look at yourself and blame yourself for some of those things too.
Good morning. I think it's a lot about the whole issue of comparison and competition rather than creation. We tend to follow those things that we were raised with or whatever, and the ideals, and I'm not sure. To me, being a Christian is about having a relationship rather than a religion, because religion is man-made and we all have those ideas about how we're supposed to be or what we're supposed to be or and do. And it's taken me a long time with the things that have happened in my life, and I'm learning to accept and love and appreciate myself, even though I may not be in the relationship that I necessarily in my mind might not have chosen, but it has worked out, extremely well for my safety and my strength. I don't know. I think we just have to come to our own understanding and going clear back to, we were told to go forth and multiply, but then we get this guilt and all this garbage about, oh, I can't do that. That's against the rules. That's against the Bible. That's whatever it's against. Or instead of focused on what it's for, what, we have natural instincts. We need that. And I kind of lost myself there.
That's okay. I think in some ways I agree with you. I think we tend to fall into that following the herd mentality kind of sometimes, and just going along instead of following our instincts sometimes. And even though it may be contrary to what others are doing, but if it's, like I said, back then when I, left that job in 2020, because it was so, up in the air about what was going on when businesses were opening, when they weren't, when, it was like, can I really make it out there as an Uber driver? Or would it be better to suffer through and work where I have benefits and this and that and the other thing, but yet go home and not be able to sleep at night? And, my instincts finally told me, no, you need to get out of this, because it's not gonna go good if you continue there, and the minute I made that, it was weird. The minute I made that decision to resign and leave, all that stress from that just left. It was so weird. I mean, I physically felt it leave. I can't describe how I felt it, but I can just say that it felt so right. So in that sense, sometimes, I think we override, even though what we know in our, like what he's saying here, even though we know, we want to go this way, but we override it and say, no, we should stay here and go here and stick to this path because this is what we agreed to, this is what we chose, or this is what we, think we should be doing. And sometimes that leads us down a deeper, darker road. And, and sometimes you got to really have the faith and guts and the love enough of yourself, and that love, for me, with God, that relationship with God, to trust and know that you're doing the right thing.
Hey guys, I wanted to hop out here real quick. I've been enjoying everything you all have been speaking on, and it's been bringing up so many things. Let me get let me pull myself out here. Here we go. The point you made, Samantha, in regards to relationships and how we create these ideas early on in regards to how we were brought up, and then how those can sort of like what the book, and when Catherine was doing her lovely reading, when it touched on how we can make these agreements with ourselves or with the universe that at times that where when later on we feel bound to them, but we're no longer that person, or we're in a different, I think maybe our bodies or minds or our souls recognize we are not in that same environment, and so we have to sort of make sense of that, and I think sometimes even just that, for me, it seems like, and what I've been understanding, that just that creates that sort of friction or inflamed or ego, or overstimulated, overactive ego and overactive mind, that we have this confrontation in between those agreements that we made previously, or in a previous life, or in an earlier time in our life, or in a previous relationship, and then we realize later that maybe our notions of how things were at that time were not correct, or things are different now, and so we have to have that flexibility. I think we have to remember to have that flexibility to re-examine those things, and then I think maybe it was Catherine and who mentioned that in regards to our work, or our preconceived notions and agreements, that we can then have that feeling of, well, maybe like letting ourselves down, because and I think maybe Samantha touched on it, and Dan as well, that we're letting ourselves down because we're not living up to our previous ideas or understandings. And I remember as a kid, thinking, this is, as I learned how things were, or how I thought things were, I would be like, well, okay, well then I'm always going to do this, or I'm never going to do that. And I really didn't think about how that might impact me later on if suddenly things were to change. But that, how strong of an oath we might be taking when we say those types of things to ourselves, and then that inflexibility that then we're not able to adjust, and then that causes us these inflamed egos. And I think, to wrap it up and kind of come full circle, is it's been bouncing off this idea that I came upon this week, and in regards to how, when our thoughts and our emotions are combined, and when we can align them, that we have some tremendous power when we can do that. And so it started me thinking about how, gosh, if we have all of these things, all of these stimulus in the world, and previous agreements and whatnot, and that are causing these inflamed egos, or as I kind of look at it, as sort of like an agitated ego or nervous system that we're having to deal with this inside. And and then the day, and I think you'll appreciate this, Dan, was I was watching the show, was watching one of the Star Trek episodes, and it was one of the characters mentioned how the one of the biggest battles is within ourselves, being able to control our emotions. And it sort of all kind of came around to be like, well, then this inflamed ego, this overstimulation, if we can learn to control that, learn to get ahead of that, learn to be flexible enough to understand and utilize our power within to combine and align everything together, then we can become much more powerful than for ourselves and within ourselves than we realize. And so I just wanted to hop out. I didn't mean to go on so long, but I really appreciate everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for everything you've said.
Well, now that made me think of something. Oh, go ahead, Samantha. I'll let you go.
All right. I'm recognizing more and more that our egos, this inflammation that they refer to, I'm like, our egos love drama, love it. It thrives in it, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's whatever. Our egos just want to be in that freaking drama, I'm telling you. And I don't know what it is about our human nature that there's this aspect of us that just loves the drama. And I can only guess that my thought process is our whole purpose of life is just for this experience, that we come here as a spiritual being in this human experience just for the fact that we want to experience the insanity of being a human. And I get confirmation by that, just because of the fact that our ego, or this part of ourselves, this human self, thrives in it. If it didn't, our world would not be as chaotic as what it is. And I'll give you an example. This week I was trying to communicate something with my husband, and I have this idea of these things that need to get done at this new house, right? And so I have my to-do list, because that's the way I operate. And I put on this list all these things that I feel like need to be addressed at the top of the priority list. And I'm enlisting, or attempting to enlist, my husband's help on this. And so I ask him for some information, and he can't get it right now, and that's fine. And yet I want to go through this list, and I want to talk about this list of things that I feel like are necessary. And he starts to get agitated, and I start to get agitated, and then we get agitated back and forth and back and forth, and then all of a sudden we're in this big freaking argument over it. And what it boils down to is that I'm trying to communicate one thing. He thinks I'm trying to communicate something different. And so we're clashing because of it. And it's like his ego is getting upset at me, and my ego is getting upset at him. And so we end up in this big fight. And, so we kind of walk away from each other for a little bit, and I go in the bathroom. And of course I'm crying because we're in an argument, and I'm hearing in my mind, these are the things that my mind is saying to me. It's saying, oh, it's the beginning of the end, or you guys are not ever gonna, and and see, the things are coming to pass that you think that are gonna come to pass, and this is never gonna work. How can you possibly expect this to work with all of us living together in this house when you and him can't even get along? So this is the stuff that my ego, inflamed ego, is yelling at me about how it can never work. It's not going to, this is going to fall apart, all this crap. And I was like being bombarded by this, like Karen was talking about earlier, about how we are the ones abusing ourselves. We're the ones that are causing this issue within ourselves. And it's so freaking true. And I had to stop myself. I had to sit there, and I started yelling at myself in my mind, shut the F up. Shut the F up. shut the F up, shut the F up. And that was what I was yelling at myself, because I'm like, this is not what I want for myself. I don't want to go on this roller coaster of craziness that my ego is trying to drag me on, because that's not going to lead me to the life that I want to have. You know, it's not going to lead me to the harmony in my relationship that I want to have. And I can see how I can see clearly how this kind of a situation can lead to relationships breaking down and being destructive and falling apart and ending up in divorce if we listen to this voice that is doom and gloom all the time, and he doesn't this and they don't that and isn't working and da 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 da, you know, because our egos will do that. They love to do that. And even though the whole time I'm feeling emotionally, no, 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 this is wrong, this is wrong, this is not where I want to be. It's, you know, it's causing all of this crying and upsetness and all of that. And that's what I feel like is my spiritual side saying, hello, quit listening to that bastard. That's not who we want to listen to. We are not that person. This is not the route we want to be on. We want to be at peace. We want to be in love. We want to be experiencing harmony. That's what we want. And so when we're having this emotional insanity, this ego inflammation, that's when I feel like we need to recognize, okay, that's our mumbo jumbo, and we need to tell it to shut the F up, because it's just trying to lead us down this path of insanity. And so, and just to kind of conclude on that whole thing, is that once I got my mind under control and all this mumbo jumbo that it was yelling at me, and I calmed myself back down, then I came in and I, you know, and talked to Chris, and I'm like, okay, I can see where our communication, you're hearing one thing, I'm hearing another thing, and I can see where we're breaking down on this, and I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to communicate with you. And so then we were able to have a better dialogue on the situation. We were able to kind of take our inflamed egos out of the picture and actually have a real conversation about what we really were trying to communicate. Then we were able to get over that and get past it. And then, you know, obviously saying that we're sorry is a big part of it, but being able to put aside that ego that is feeling like it's being attacked is the biggest part. And that thing is a monster. It's a monster. So I love that it talks about in this book about, or this section about the inflamed ego, because that's exactly what it is. And our egos just love that shit. They love it. So that's all I got to say for now.
Well, that kind of ties in with what I was going to throw out there too, because I think you kind of hit a little. Also, I think when excuse me, when we can recognize that, and I think sometimes we forget to stop and recognize that that's what's going on, and if we can get ourselves calmed down, because a lot of times, and going back to what Jason was saying, if we can get ourselves, our emotions, our ego, all that kind of under control and back to center, it's not only going to bring us peace and that calmness and that being able to better listen and hear what others are saying, it's going to open that door for others to hopefully hear us, and so we can hear what they're saying and back and forth, so that way it doesn't become the argument. And so to me, it's also like you're looking out for yourself and getting yourself back under control so you can get that dialogue, but you also, in a roundabout way, thinking about the universe and love in that aspect, and not letting the inflamed ego take over to ripple out, to put out that negative energy. What you're doing is stopping, you're getting the emotions and everything in control, so then you can go back out with love and push that out. And so then that comes back out and it resonates, and then allows others to then, maybe subside on their side a little bit and get themselves to a little bit more control, even if they're just reacting to how you're reacting. But I think if we, can do the two things that Samantha and Jason were saying, it can play a big part in how it's put back out and equalize the instability. And going back to what this book is talking about, whatever rises, love that. So, getting back to that love and getting that love going back out, which love, covers all, and therefore it brings it more back into equilibrium. So with that, I know we're past the hour. We're about 10 minutes past. So any last thoughts or anything?
I had one last thought, just real fast. I heard a quote the other day or something, and I felt the need to write it down, and it kind of like really impacted me. And it was just like this quick little quote. And I feel like it really goes along with what we're kind of talking about. And it goes, "It doesn't matter what kind of victory you've had in the day, the only person that can make that victory small is you." And it kind of really impacted me because I never really thought about that, and like it makes a lot of sense, because like there's a lot of victories that we all have. I guess it just depends on how you want to see it. But something like this, it kind of went with like another story where this older gentleman was having issues, and he wasn't very mobile, and he wanted to put on his shoes, and they weren't. And like this person that he was working with, where they were working for months and months, and finally he was able to do it by himself. And he's like, "Look, shoes." And she made a big deal about it. Like it was a big victory for him, and she was super excited for him. And he had to kind of stop and like, that's kind of, because he had made it so small for himself. Like it was an insignificant thing to him. Like everybody can put their shoes on. I should be able to know how to do this, and then she was making this big deal about it. And he just kind of realized like the only person that made this victory small was myself. I'm the only one that can make these victories small. And, I'm just thought I would leave that with you guys. So I kind of went along with what we were talking about. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Anybody?
Yeah, mine goes along the same thing that everybody's been talking about is, the least tended to relationship for, I would venture to say 99.9% of the people on the planet is the relationship with self. And if you think about it, I mean, we know, those of us in this group, we know that we are spiritual beings that inhabit these human bodies. And so if you think about your human body, just imagine that, your little human body is there, and then your spiritual being comes in and inhabits that. That is the relationship between you and your body, between your spirit and your body. That is the relationship that should be most tended to, and it's the most neglected and most abused of any. And I would just encourage, this is something that I've been doing, and I have had many, many tears because of doing this. Just make a habit of, if no other time, at least one time in the morning, look yourself in the mirror, look into your eyes, look into your being, love this body that you inhabit with your soul. Be that friend to yourself that you can't seem to find in the world, or be that person that you can depend on, that you can cry to, that you can open up all your fears to. And if you do this, I promise you, if you do it sincerely, put your hand on the mirror so that your hand is touching, you're touching yourself like that, and really connect, and you will move through a lot of grief, and you will find a camaraderie that maybe you've been missing your entire life. And nobody else can give that to your body except the spirit that inhabits that. And all of this friction that we feel is because we're not in alignment with that spirit body. There's a disagreement in that relationship, not necessarily the one between you and the outside person that you're blaming it on. It's really the friction between just you and yourself not being able to agree because your higher being is not getting pulled down into all that inflamed ego bullshit. You know, your higher being is just there about love and acceptance and forgiveness. And so that friction that we feel is not with that outer person, it's within ourselves. And I know everybody here recognizes that, or is learning to recognize that. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and go meet your best friend that always should have been in the mirror. Love you guys.
I had a thought when you were just talking, Catherine, and for those of you who are dog lovers, you're going to recognize this. And my thought is that our spiritual self is like the dog we come home to. That dog, no matter how much we neglect it or yell at it or whatever, it just keeps coming back with love every time. And, you know, I don't know, maybe that's not true for somebody who really abuses their dog, but I think that, you know, the average pet owner who sometimes yells at their dog for, get out of the food, or quit, get off of me, or whatever, you know what I'm talking about, because they are just absolutely pure agape love. And that's our spiritual self, because we keep coming back here and we keep going through this, and I mean, that's, otherwise we'd be out of here, right? You know, and so when we are feeling that pain, is that we can go within ourselves and feel that love if we allow ourselves to do it. And it's that ego aspect of it that tries to make us think that that isn't a true thing. It's the thing that tells, it's the one that's always constantly back there going, saying, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, this isn't the way it should be, this is you know. And yet at the same time, if we can sit just within ourselves for even just a moment, sometimes we just need a moment where we can quiet that baloney that is coming at us and sit in the moment and realize, wait a second, I have peace right here within myself. I have happiness right here within myself. And this moment, I am perfectly okay. And yeah, sometimes that ego loves to yell and scream at us, but you know, I'm still okay, and I've been okay, and I've made it this far, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to make it the next forward. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to have a perfectly harmonious relationship with my person or myself or my children or my friends or my work co-workers or whatever. So that's my thought. Jump at you.
Yeah, and that's why I love getting back to this group every Saturday, because it helps me to re-engage with these ideas that are so important. You know, like what Karen said earlier in regards to having something come up in our day that throws us off and kind of forget that we have the ability to sort of take control and a different way of reacting to these things once we've taken the time to learn them. And I love what Angel said as well, and also in regards to what you said, Samantha, and the ego can be a monster or seem like a monster sometimes, and you know, but I also look at those thoughts and that side of things as it's really trying to look out for me. And so I've had times like that where those thoughts, those concerns come up in my mind, and I'm like, I have to tell myself, you know, that I actually have to confront it with love and say, hey, I hear you. I appreciate what you're what you're saying, but I don't want you to focus on that. That's not helping me. I want you, this is what I want you to focus on. And I give it something else to focus on. So it can, because I think it wants to help, but sometimes it's just telling me these things that I've, these, I don't know, these cliches and stuff that are out there that you might, that, warning, this, this is going to happen, or, and so thanks to kind of this book and, everything that we've studied, I can approach it differently, recognize it, and recognize that inner speak, and try to pull everything back into alignment, and give my subconscious something else to work on, or a different way to help me. And it's all because of you guys and this group. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Well, with that, I'm going to close us out. We are in the book, Whatever Arises, Love That, A Love Revolution That Begins With You by Matt Kahn. We're in chapter 6. Next week, we will be going on to the next part, Monk on a Mountaintop Meditating. And so please don't forget to like and subscribe to our Facebook page. You can find us there at Mindset Mastery Collective. You can go to our YouTube channel, also at Mindset Mastery Collective. You can also find us on our website, Mindset Mastery Collective, also there. But please give a thumbs up, share. If you want to join us or be on the panel, please get a hold of one of us and we'll give you the link to jump on and join us. Or if you just want to watch or be a part of it, you can also click on the link or go to the YouTube channel every Saturday morning as we broadcast live. So with that, that's it for the Saturday Morning Mastermind, and we'll see